It was just past midnight when the old man in the leather chair stopped breathing. At least, that's what it looked like. His chest rose and fell slowly. His eyes, half closed, reflected the dim glow of the city lights outside. A glass of whiskey sat untouched on the table beside him. The safe behind his desk, wide open. Stacks of $100 bills, gold bars, documents stamped confidential, all exposed, unprotected. As if he didn't care. But he did care. Because Victor Lang wasn't asleep, and he wasn't drunk. He was watching, waiting, for someone to walk in and prove, once and for all, that honesty is a myth. He'd spent 50 years building an empire on steel, shipping, and silence. He'd survived war zones, boardroom coups, and betrayal by his own brother. But nothing had hurt him more than the truth he'd learned too late. People will always take what they can get away with. So tonight, he was testing that theory, and he knew exactly who would walk through that door. A woman, a boy. No idea they were being watched. No idea that their simple choice, in a moment when no one was supposed to be looking, would not only save them, but destroy the man who thought he was above it all. What Victor didn't know? That sometimes the smallest hands carry the heaviest conscience, and the quietest act of decency can start a chain reaction that ends in justice. Victor Lang wasn't born rich. He was born angry. Grew up in a tenement in Pittsburgh. His father vanished. His mother worked 3 jobs and still couldn't pay the heat. By 14, Victor was stealing copper wire from construction sites just to eat. But he had one thing most didn't. A mind like a steel trap. He taught himself accounting from library books. Landed a job as a clerk at 19. By 35, he owned his first factory. By 50, one of the largest private industrial conglomerates in the Midwest. But power doesn't bring peace. It brings paranoia. And for Victor, the final betrayal came from his CFO, a man he'd treated like a son. Over 3 years, the man stole $4.2 million, not through complex fraud. No, he just walked into Victor's office every Friday, opened the safe, and took cash, right off the top. When Victor found out, he didn't call the police. He fired him silently, quietly, because he was ashamed, not of the theft, but of his own blindness. He thought he could see people, judge character, but he'd been fooled. So he started asking himself, is there anyone left who wouldn't steal, if given the chance? Not for greed, but for survival, for their child. He wanted to believe the answer was yes, but after a lifetime of hard edges and broken promises, he no longer trusted his own hope. So he decided to test it. One last time. Her name was Lena Reyes. She'd been cleaning offices in that building for 7 years. Every night, like clockwork, she arrived at 10:30 p.m. with her son, Mateo, in tow. Mateo was 10, small for his age, wore glasses held together with tape, always had a notebook in his hand, not for school, but for drawing. He drew everything, the pattern of tiles, the way light bent through glass, the shapes of clouds he saw from the rooftop during breaks. Lena was a widow. Her husband, a firefighter, died in the line of duty when Mateo was 4. Since then, it had just been the 2 of them. She cleaned, he learned. She worked nights so she could be with him during the day. He came to work with her so he wouldn't be alone. And yes, some executives complained. Why bring a child here, they muttered. But Lena didn't care. She taught Mateo to be quiet, to respect space, to wipe every surface, fold every towel, and never touch what wasn't his. One night, as she cleaned Victor's office, Mateo noticed a book left open on the desk. The Principles of Structural Engineering. He picked it up, gently, and flipped through it. "Mom," he whispered, "this is about how buildings don't fall down." Lena smiled. "Then maybe one day you'll be the one who makes sure they don't." Victor, watching from the security feed, paused the footage. He replayed it 3 times. Something about that moment, the reverence in the boy's voice, stirred something long buried. But he wasn't ready to believe. Not yet. So he set the trap. The next week, Victor called his head of security. "I want the main office safe left open every night for the next 10 days. Cash, gold, documents, all visible." The man blinked. "Sir, that's a fortune." "Exactly," Victor said. I want to see who walks in and what they do when they think no one is watching. He made sure the cameras were working, but he also did something else. He started falling asleep in his chair every night at 11:15 p.m., eyes half shut, breathing slow, a glass of whiskey beside him. A perfect illusion. He wanted to see Lena, but more than that, he wanted to see Matteo. Would the boy steal? Would he tell his mother? Would he just look and walk away? On the 7th night they arrived, Lena began dusting the shelves. Matteo sat at the small side table sketching the skyline. Victor held his breath. The safe was wide open. The money. Just there. And the boy? He didn't even look at it. At first, then something caught his eye. Not the cash, not the gold, but the mess. Papers scattered, bills out of order, a folder labeled payroll left dangling, and Matteo stood up. He walked over, not to the money, but to the desk. Carefully, he picked up the payroll folder, straightened it, placed it back in the safe. Then, with the precision of a librarian, he began organizing the stacks of cash, not by color, but by denomination. 50s here, hundreds there. He even smoothed out the crumpled bills with his palms. Then he noticed the gold bars. One was slightly tilted. He reached in, gently, and straightened it, like he was fixing a picture on a wall. Then he stepped back. "Mom," he whispered. "Mr. Lang's office is messy. I fixed it." Lena turned, startled. "Mijo, you can't touch the boss's things." "But it was disorganized," Matteo said. "You always say if you see something wrong, make it right, even if no one asks." Lena smiled, softly, proudly. And Victor? Victor felt something he hadn't felt in over a decade. His throat tightened, his eyes burned. Because this boy, this child, had just done the one thing Victor had spent a lifetime searching for. He saw disorder and chose to fix it. Not for reward, not for recognition, but because it was right. And in that moment, Victor Lang, billionaire, skeptic, fortress of a man, felt something crack inside him. Not anger, not pride. Hope. But that hope wouldn't last long, because someone else was watching, and he was about to make a fatal mistake. His name was Clayton Reeves, VP of Operations, 52 years old, son of a senator. Wore $5,000 suits, drove a vintage Jaguar. Believed people like Lena were necessary but beneath notice. He'd been watching her for weeks, not because she was careless, but because she wasn't, and that bothered him. At a staff meeting, he leaned over to HR. "Why is that cleaning woman getting paid 18% above scale?" The manager hesitated. "She's efficient, no absences, seniority." Clayton smirked. "Efficient? She brings her kid here. That's not efficiency. That's exploitation." He didn't say it out loud, but he believed it. People like her didn't deserve comfort. They didn't deserve raises. They didn't deserve to feel safe. And when he saw Victor's increased security protocols, extra cameras, late-night alerts, he grew suspicious. So one night, he stayed late. And he saw it. Matteo, organizing the safe. Clayton didn't see honesty. He saw opportunity. He pulled Lena aside the next evening. "You're getting extra pay," he said coldly. "I wonder why." Lena froze. "I just do my job, sir." "Your job is to clean, not to cozy up to the boss. Not to bring your son into executive spaces." Mr. Lang has never objected. "He won't object when he's gone," Clayton said, stepping closer. "And neither will you." Lena said nothing, but that night she told Matteo, "Mijo, if anyone ever makes you feel small, remember, your heart is bigger than their pride." Clayton didn't know it, but he had just awakened something in Victor Lang, something dangerous. It started small. Lena's schedule was changed. Moved to the dirtiest floors. Her cleaning supplies were accidentally withheld. Then one night her paycheck was short. When she asked HR, they said budget adjustment. But Victor saw it all, through the cameras, through payroll logs, through the quiet fear in Lena's eyes. And then came the final act. Clayton waited in the parking garage. As Lena and Matteo walked to their old sedan, he stepped into the light. "You think you're special?" he said. "You think your little boy impresses the boss?" Lena stepped in front of Matteo. We just want to go home." "Home?" Clayton laughed. "You call that home? You're lucky you have a job at all." Mateo looked up. "You're mean. And you're in the way," Clayton snapped. "Next time, stay in your lane." Victor watched the footage from his home, his hands clenched, because he knew now. This wasn't about money. It was about power. And Clayton had just crossed a line. So Victor made a call. To Eleanor Price, a former federal prosecutor, now a private investigator. "Eleanor," he said, "I need you to dig into Clayton Reeves. Every email, every call, every social media post." "Why?" she asked. "Because sometimes," Victor said, "justice doesn't come from the law. It comes from someone who finally sees." Eleanor delivered in 72 hours. Photos of Clayton at private clubs, making racist jokes, texts to colleagues, keep the help invisible, and worst of all, a plan. He was going to plant a stolen diamond necklace in Lena's locker, then discover it, call the police, make an example. Victor didn't stop him. He let it happen. Because this time, the cameras weren't just watching, they were hunting. On the night of the setup, Victor had Eleanor in the parking lot, reporters waiting nearby, legal team on standby, and when Clayton pulled the necklace from Lena's locker, smirking, Victor stepped out of the shadows. "Clayton," he said, "I've been waiting." Clayton froze. "You see," Victor continued, "I knew you'd do this." He held up a tablet. Video of Clayton planting the necklace, audio of him bragging about it to his brother, photos of his history of targeting minority staff. "And this," Victor said, "is being live-streamed to the board, the press, and the FBI." Clayton turned pale. "You can't." "I already did." The police arrived. Handcuffs clicked. And as Clayton was led away, Lena held Mateo close. Victor walked to them. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have acted sooner." Lena looked at him. "You did. You finally saw us." The fallout was swift. Clayton was fired, charged. His reputation evaporated. News outlets ran the story. Executive tries to frame janitor, gets caught on billionaire's cameras. His family disowned him, his country club revoked his membership, and within months he was working as a night security guard, ironically, at a cleaning supply warehouse. Meanwhile, Victor made an announcement. "Starting today, Lena Reyes is our new director of workplace integrity." The board gasped. "She has a degree in social justice," Victor said. "She just never had a chance to use it." Lena cried. Mateo clapped. And Victor? He handed Mateo a scholarship to the best STEM school in the state. 5 years later, Lena launched a national program placing former janitorial staff into management roles. Mateo, he's now 15, interning at NASA. And Victor, he still sits in that same leather chair. But the safe? It's always open. Because he no longer fears what people will take. He wonders what they'll choose to fix. You see, justice isn't always about punishment. Sometimes, it's about opportunity. Victor didn't destroy Clayton to feel powerful. He lifted Lena and Mateo to prove something. Decency should never be punished. And sometimes the people we overlook, the ones we assume are beneath us, are the ones holding the world together. Clayton thought power was control. Victor learned it was courage. The courage to see. The courage to act. The courage to admit you were wrong. Today, that office building has a new sign near the entrance. In honor of Mateo Reyes, who taught us that integrity isn't loud, it's quiet, and it changes everything. And every night when the cleaning crew arrives, they find one desk already organized, ready, because someone always remembers. I've told you many stories in my years, but this one stays with me, because it reminds us, you never know who's watching. You never know whose small act of honesty, whose quiet courage might change the course of a life, or a fortune, or a company, or a soul. So the next time you see someone overlooked, ask yourself, am I the one who walks past, or am I the one who finally sees? If this story moved you, if it reminded you that goodness still wins even in the darkest corners, then do me a favor. Subscribe. Because every week I share stories like this, real, powerful, human, to remind us that no act of kindness is ever wasted, And sometimes it starts with a child and a messy desk. Thank you for listening. Until next time.